The alarm screamed through the Pentagon's war room at 3:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a sound that would mark humanity's last moment of innocence. General Marcus Blake had been called from his bed, still wearing his pajamas under his hastily thrown-on uniform. When the impossible appeared on every screen in the most secure building on Earth, massive alien vessels descended through Earth's atmosphere like silver daggers. Each one the size of Manhattan, their hulls gleaming with technology that made human engineering look like stone tools. The air itself seemed to vibrate with their presence, and that otherworldly hum, that deep, resonant frequency that made Marcus's teeth ache and his bones feel hollow filled every speaker in the room. "Sir, we're getting reports from every major city." Lieutenant Jessica Ward's voice cracked with barely controlled panic as she struggled to process the flood of incoming data. Her hands trembled as she switched between satellite feeds showing the same terrifying scene repeated across the globe. London, Tokyo, Berlin, Moscow, everywhere. The silver ships hung in the sky like monuments to humanity's helplessness. Marcus felt something cold and ancient stir in his chest, a sensation he'd never experienced but somehow recognized. It was the same feeling his grandfather had described from the beaches of Normandy, when young men faced an impossible enemy and found something primal awakening within them. For 70 years, humanity had grown soft, comfortable in their peaceful existence. Children played video games instead of learning to fight. Scientists built medical devices instead of weapons. The world had forgotten what it meant to be afraid. But here's the thing about fear: it's not just an emotion. It's a teacher. Humanity was about to get the lesson of a lifetime. The first alien beam lanced down from the lead ship, a pillar of blue-white energy that carved through downtown New York like a hot knife through butter. The Empire State Building, that symbol of human achievement, simply ceased to exist. One moment it stood proud against the sky, the next it was molten slag raining down on the streets below. The screams of millions should have been the sound of humanity's surrender. Instead, something unexpected happened. Something that would make the aliens question everything they thought they knew about the third planet from Sol Dot in Detroit. Factory workers abandoned their car assembly lines without a word. But they didn't run. They didn't hide. Instead, they began sketching weapon designs on napkins, their hands moving with a precision that surprised even them. These were men and women who built things, who understood machinery and production. And now their minds were calculating something else entirely: how to kill efficiently. How to build death on an industrial scale. A kindergarten teacher in Ohio named Mrs. Patricia Williams found herself staring at her classroom's periodic table, her mind suddenly racing with chemical combinations she'd never studied. She was calculating explosive ratios with disturbing precision, her gentle hands that had tied countless shoelaces. Steady as she wrote formulas that would have made her grandfather's generation proud. The same woman who sang lullabies to 5-year-olds was mentally designing weapons that would make the aliens regret their invasion. You might wonder how this is possible. How could peaceful people transform so quickly? The answer lies in something. The aliens couldn't have predicted humanity's DNA carries the memory of every war ever fought, every battle ever won, every enemy ever defeated. It's not just genetics. It's legacy. Dr. Robert Hayes, a quantum physicist who hadn't touched a weapon in decades, watched his peaceful research lab transform before his eyes. The particle accelerator he'd used to unlock the secrets of the universe was already being mentally redesigned for a very different purpose. His colleagues, brilliant minds who dedicated their lives to healing and discovery, were now collaborating on something that would make the Manhattan Project look like a high school science fair. "My God," he whispered, his hands already moving, to convert his equipment into something far more sinister. We remember. The sleeping god of war opened one eye, and the aliens had no idea what they had just awakened. You see, invaders had made a critical error in their intelligence gathering. They'd studied humanity's recent history and seen peace treaties, medical advances, and space exploration. They'd seen a species that had turned swords into plowshares and assumed those swords could never be reforged. They'd confused the choice to be peaceful with the inability to be violent, but humanity hadn't become peaceful because they'd forgotten how to fight. They'd become peaceful because they'd learned to fight too well. Every innovation, every technology, every advancement in the past 70 years had been built on the foundation of a species that had clawed its way to the top of Earth's food chain. And now, with survival on the line, all that peaceful innovation was about to reveal its true nature. The compound effect was beginning. It's just like how small investments grow into massive fortunes over time. Humanity's dormant warrior instincts were about to snowball into something that would reshape the galaxy. Each awakening human was a catalyst, triggering others, spreading the transformation like wildfire across the globe. The aliens thought they were attacking a sleeping giant. They were wrong. They weren't attacking a giant at all. They were attacking the gods of war who had chosen to slumber. And now those gods were beginning to stir. If you want to understand how small actions can compound into world-changing power, make sure to check out my next video on the incredible force of compounding, because what happened to humanity next would prove that even the smallest awakening can grow into universe-shaking might. Captain David Mitchell gripped the controls of his hastily converted cargo ship, his knuckles white against the metal as he stared at the impossible sight before him. 3 days ago, this vessel had been hauling medical supplies to Mars. Now it bristled with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Technology that had been theoretical just 72 hours earlier. The transformation wasn't just of his ship, it was of humanity itself, and the speed was terrifying even to him. Around him, his crew worked with the cold efficiency of a species that had rediscovered its true nature. Oh, these weren't soldiers. They were truck drivers, accountants, teachers, and mechanics who had answered the call when Earth burned. Yet they moved with the precision of seasoned warriors, their hands steady on controls they'd never touched before, their minds calculating trajectories and kill ratios with disturbing ease. "Target locked," announced Staff Sergeant Lisa Thompson. From the weapons console, her voice steady as granite. No, but if you looked closely, you could see her eyes. They burned with a fury that came from watching her hometown of Denver reduced to ash and radioactive glass. She'd been a high school mathematics teacher just days ago, helping teenagers understand algebra. Now, she was calculating the death of alien fleets with the same methodical precision. These bastards picked the wrong species to mess with. The alien commander's transmission crackled through their speakers, filled with confusion and growing fear. Impossible. Your kind was pacified. Your weapons were primitive toys. Our intelligence showed you had abandoned warfare. David's laugh was sharp as broken glass, echoing through the bridge. You studied our history but learned nothing, did you? His finger hovered over the firing button, a device that had been a grain elevator control just days before. Did you think we developed nuclear weapons because we were peaceful? Did you assume we split the atom for fun? Did you believe we mapped the human genome to write poetry? Here's what the aliens didn't understand about humanity. We don't just adapt to war, we transform it. Every peaceful innovation of the past century was about to reveal its deadly potential. GPS satellites designed to help lost hikers were now guiding precision strikes across light years. Medical nanobots created to fight cancer were being reprogrammed to devour alien hull plating. Fusion reactors built to power cities were being weaponized into devices that made thermonuclear weapons look like firecrackers. But what gets even more incredible than that? Across the solar system, the awakening continued with ruthless efficiency that would have made humanity's ancestors proud. Mars colonies. Those peaceful scientific outposts that had spent decades studying geology and atmospheric composition revealed hidden manufacturing capabilities that dwarfed Earth's entire industrial output. Those same facilities that had been producing breathable air and growing food were now churning out weapons of mass destruction at a rate that defied every economic model. Jupiter's research stations, its quiet laboratories that had been studying the gas giant storms for pure science, transformed into fortress shipyards overnight. The same engineers who had designed probes to dive into Jupiter's atmosphere were now building vessels that could punch through alien shields like they were tissue paper. In the asteroid belt, that collection of rocks that had been quietly mined for rare metals became a maze of automated weapon platforms that turned space itself into a killing field. You might be wondering how this transformation happened so quickly. The answer lies in something the aliens couldn't have predicted. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our ability to repurpose, to adapt, to find new uses for old tools. We're the species that turned farming equipment into weapons, turned communication networks into military command structures, turned entertainment systems into training simulators. Dr. Amanda Foster stood in what had once been the pediatric wing of Houston Children's Hospital, now converted into a biological warfare research facility. She'd been a surgeon for 15 years, dedicating her life to saving children with the same gentle precision. She now used to coordinate protocols that would make the aliens wish they'd never heard of Earth. Her hands, which had performed thousands of life-saving operations, now moved with surgical precision as she designed biological agents that would target alien physiology specifically. They wanted to see what humans could do, she said, her voice ice-cold as she watched test results. That would have horrified her just days ago. Let's show them. The transformation wasn't just technological, it was psychological. Every human who had ever played a strategy game, every person who had ever watched a war movie, every individual who had ever read a history book was suddenly drawing on knowledge they didn't know they possessed. The collective memory of humanity's warrior past was awakening, and it was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The aliens had made the fatal error of mistaking humanity's capacity for peace as weakness. They were about to learn the difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight. You see, a wolf doesn't become a sheep just because it decides to graze peacefully. And humanity had been the apex predator of Earth long before they reached for the stars. The compound effect was accelerating beyond all prediction. Each human awakening triggered others, each innovation sparked dozens more, each act of resistance multiplied into 1,000. The same principle that builds wealth over time, small, consistent actions compounding into massive results, was now building humanity's war machine at a rate that was rewriting the laws of military logistics. What happened next would prove that when humanity decides to fight, the universe itself holds its breath. And if you want to understand how this incredible force of compounding works in every aspect of life, make sure to check out my next video, because the power that transformed humanity from peaceful explorers into galactic conquerors is the same. Power that can transform your life in ways you never imagined. Admiral Tyler Jackson stood on the bridge of humanity's first dreadnought, the USS Retribution, watching alien fleets burn across the void like dying stars. The ship hummed with power that made the old nuclear submarines look like children's bath toys. In just 2 weeks, humanity had gone from peaceful space explorers to builders of vessels that could crack planets in half. The transformation was so complete, so terrifying, that even Tyler sometimes wondered if they'd lost their souls in the process around him. His crew worked with the cold efficiency of a species that had rediscovered its true nature. These weren't career military officers, they were the awakened. A former kindergarten teacher operated the targeting systems with the same patience she'd once used to help. 5-year-olds tie their shoes? An insurance adjuster calculated the destruction of entire star systems with the same methodical precision he'd once used to assess car accidents. The accountant who'd spent decades balancing books now balanced the equations of annihilation. Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different alien worlds, reported Commander Rachel Peters, her voice tight with barely contained rage. She'd been a wildlife photographer before the invasion, spending her life capturing the beauty of Earth's creatures. She documented the destruction of alien civilizations with the same artistic eye. They're begging us to stop. Tyler felt no satisfaction, only the burning need for justice that had consumed him since watching his daughter's school vaporized in the first wave of attacks. These creatures had murdered billions of innocent people, had awakened something in humanity that should have stayed sleeping. They'd turned teachers into weapons designers, doctors into biological warfare experts, and peaceful explorers into the most efficient killing machines the galaxy had ever seen. Tell them we'll consider their surrender after we've finished our demonstration, Tyler said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd watched his world burn and decided to return the favor with interest. You want to know what's truly terrifying about humanity? We don't just fight wars, we revolutionize them. Every conflict in our history has been followed by innovations that changed everything. The aliens thought they were facing another primitive species. Instead, they'd awakened the descendants of the people who'd turned wooden clubs into nuclear weapons in the span of a few thousand years. The alien admiral's desperate transmission filled the bridge, his voice breaking with fear. We yield. We underestimated your species. Please, show mercy. We will withdraw from your space and never return. Tyler's laugh was cold as the vacuum of space. Mercy? His voice was quiet, deadly, carrying the weight of every human life lost. You vaporized children in their classrooms. You destroyed hospitals filled with patients. You turned peaceful cities into graveyards of glass and ash. His hand moved to the firing controls weapons that had been theoretical just days ago. You tried to be better than our ancestors. You've reminded us why we can't afford to be. Here's the thing about humanity that the aliens never understood. We compound our learning. Every generation builds on the knowledge of the previous one. But when we're threatened, that compounding effect accelerates exponentially. The same principle that turned small investments into massive fortunes over time had turned humanity's peaceful innovations into weapons of unimaginable destruction. Dr. Kevin Walsh, once a climate scientist who'd spent his career studying weather patterns to save the planet, now coordinated planet-killing weapons with the same methodical approach. The man who dedicated his life to understanding how to preserve worlds now applied that knowledge to destroying them efficiently. Target their homeworld's infrastructure, he ordered, his voice steady as he watched probability calculations that would have made him weep just weeks ago. Leave their population centers intact for now. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The same species that had worried about carbon emissions and endangered species was now casually discussing the systematic destruction of entire civilizations. But that's what happens when you threaten a species' survival. The moral luxuries of peace disappear, placed by the cold mathematics of war. But wait, it gets even more incredible. The aliens had awakened humanity's capacity for total war. And now they were learning why every other species in the galaxy had either joined them or been destroyed. You see, humans don't just fight wars, they perfect them. We take the art of destruction and turn it into a science. We analyze, optimize, and systematize until our enemies don't just lose, they cease to exist as a threat forever. The retributions. Weapon systems hummed to life, each one representing a breakthrough in physics that would have taken decades to achieve in peacetime. Fusion cannons that could melt asteroids, gravity weapons that could turn a planet's own mass against it. Temporal disruptors that could age enemy ships to dust in seconds. Each innovation built on the last, compounding into a crescendo of destruction. That made their ancestors' weapons look like toys. The alien fleets scattered like leaves before a hurricane. Right. But it was too late. Humanity had learned a terrible lesson. Sometimes the only way to ensure peace is to make war so costly that no one dares to disturb it again. The same species that had sent peaceful explorers to the stars was now sending a message that would echo across the galaxy for millennia. Tyler watched another alien fleet vanish in nuclear fire and felt nothing but the cold satisfaction of a job well done. They'd wanted to see what humanity could do when threatened. Now they knew. The question was, would any of them survive to remember the lesson? The compound effect that had built human civilization was now building something else. Entirely a reputation that would make the galaxy think twice before disturbing Earth's slumber ever again. And if you want to understand how this incredible power of compounding works in every aspect of life, make sure to check out my next video, because the same force that transformed humanity to galactic conquerors can transform your life in ways you never imagined. Colonel Brandon Hayes led the assault on the alien command center, his team moving with lethal precision through corridors that reeked of fear and defeat. The walls were scorched black from human plasma weapons, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with the terror of a species that had finally met their match. These weren't professional soldiers storming the fortress. They were accountants, teachers, and mechanics who had discovered that every human carried the genetic memory of 10,000 generations of warriors. The enemy's superior technology meant nothing against beings who had learned to turn every tool into a weapon. Coffee makers had become improvised explosive devices. Medical scanners had been converted into targeting systems. Even the aliens' own technology was being turned against them by humans who approached problem-solving with the same innovative spirit that had taken them from caves to spaceships in just a few millennia. "Please," the alien leader begged, his scaled hands trembling as he cowered behind what remained of his command console. His voice cracked with the desperation of a predator who had suddenly become prey. "We didn't know, couldn't have known what you truly were." Brandon's smile was cold as space, carrying the weight of every human life lost in the initial attack. What we truly were. He stepped closer, his boots crunching on the debris of alien technology. We're the same species that fought 2 world wars with primitive weapons. Did you think we'd forgotten how to kill just because we chose to heal instead? Here's what the aliens never understood about humanity. We don't just learn from our mistakes, we compound our knowledge across generations. Every strategy guide, every tactical manual, every war movie they'd dismissed as primitive entertainment was actually a training program. We'd been preparing for this moment for decades without even knowing it. He gestured to his team, each member covering the room with weapons that had been kitchen appliances just weeks ago. Every one of these soldiers learned warfare from games. Your species dismissed as entertainment. Every tactical manual you ignored, every strategic simulation you called play, all preparation for this moment. Think about that for a second. While the aliens had been conquering primitive worlds for 3,000 years, humanity had been unconsciously preparing for war through entertainment. Video games that taught strategy and tactics, movies that explored military history, books that analyzed every conflict in human history. Even children's games like chess and checkers were warfare simulations in disguise. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, who'd been an elementary school gym teacher before the invasion, now coordinated the final sweep with the same organizational skills she'd once used to manage kickball games. "Sector 7 secured," she reported, her voice steady despite the alien bodies scattered around her. "No survivors, no resistance." The compound effect had reached its terrifying conclusion. Every peaceful innovation, every humanitarian advancement, every scientific breakthrough had been unconsciously designed with dual purposes. The same GPS satellites that helped lost hikers were now guiding precision strikes. The same medical knowledge that saved lives was being used to design biological weapons. The same communication networks that connected families were coordinating the systematic destruction of an entire galactic empire. Dr. Michelle Carter, monitoring the operation from orbit aboard the USS Retribution, coordinated the final phase. With surgical precision, former cancer researcher who dedicated her life to saving children, she now deployed nano-weapons that made their ancestors' chemical warfare look merciful. Her hands moved across holographic displays with the same gentle precision she'd once used to remove tumors. "They wanted to see humanity's true nature," she said, her voice ice-cold as she watched the tactical display show the complete collapse of alien resistance. Mission accomplished. But here's the terrifying part. This wasn't humanity's true nature. This was humanity's survival instinct. The same species that had worried about endangered species and climate change had transformed into the most efficient, killing machines the galaxy had ever seen. Not because they enjoyed it, but because they had to. The aliens had made the fatal error of assuming that because humans were capable of peace, they were naturally peaceful. They had confused the temporary absence of war with the permanent absence of the capacity for war. It was like assuming a sleeping lion was vegetarian because it wasn't currently hunting. You want to know what's truly frightening about this transformation? It happened in just 3 weeks. 3 weeks from the first alien attack to the complete destruction of a 3,000-year-old galactic empire. That's the power of compound learning when survival is on the line. Now, as human forces secured, the alien homeworld, the galaxy, trembled. Every civilization that had dismissed humanity as weak now understood the terrible truth. The most dangerous predator was the one that chose not to hunt. The same species that had sent peaceful explorers to the stars, that had built international space stations and shared medical knowledge freely. It just demonstrated what happened when their survival was threatened. Brandon stood over the alien leader, his weapon trained on the creature that had ordered the deaths of billions of humans. "You've studied our history," he said quietly. "You saw our wars, our weapons, our capacity for destruction. But you made one critical error." The alien's eyes widened with fear. "What error?" "You assumed we were proud of it," Brandon replied. "You thought because we could wage war, we wanted to wage war. You never understood that our greatest achievement wasn't learning how to fight, it was learning how to choose not to fight." The silence that followed was deafening. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations were receiving the same message. Humanity had returned to peace. But the universe would never forget what they were capable of when threatened. The compound effect that had built human civilization had just built something else. Entirely a reputation that would ensure Earth's safety for millennia to come. And if you want to understand how this incredible power of compounding works in every aspect of life, make sure to check out my next video, because the same force that transformed humanity into galactic legends can transform your life in ways you never imagined. 6 months after the first attack, President Jennifer Adams stood in the ruins of the alien empire, watching as humanity's war machine systematically dismantled 3,000 years of conquest. The speed and efficiency were breathtaking, terrifying even to her. In less than half a year, the same species that had worried about carbon emissions and endangered species had reduced the galaxy's most powerful civilization to begging for mercy. The transformation had been complete. Every major alien world was either under human control or broadcasting surrender signals on every frequency. Space stations that had dominated trade routes for millennia were now human outposts. The mighty Zephyrian fleet, which had conquered 1,000 worlds, was nothing but debris fields scattered across the void. "The galaxy is ours," reported General Blake, his weathered face showing no joy in victory. The man who had started this war in his pajamas now commanded fleets that could sterilize entire star systems. Every major alien civilization has either surrendered or been neutralized. "We've achieved total strategic dominance." Jennifer nodded, absorbing the magnitude of what humanity had accomplished. Then she did something that shocked every observer, human and alien alike. She began ordering the stand-down, begin the transition. Back to civilian production. Convert the war fleets to exploration vessels. We're done. The silence that followed was deafening. In the command center, officers who had spent months calculating the destruction of worlds suddenly found themselves processing demobilization orders. The war machine that had seemed unstoppable was voluntarily shutting itself down. The alien survivors couldn't comprehend it. Their own species had built empires on conquest, viewing war as the natural state of existence. To them, power was meant to be used, dominance was meant to be maintained. But your power, your capabilities, stammered the Zephyrian ambassador, his voice breaking with confusion. "Are what they've always been," Jennifer replied, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who truly understood power. "We don't conquer because we enjoy it, we fight because we must. The threat is neutralized, so we return to what we were." Here's what made this moment so revolutionary. Humanity had just proven that the most dangerous species in the galaxy was also the most restrained. They had the power to rule everything, and they chose not to use it. That's not weakness. That's evolution beyond the need for constant dominance. Already, across human space, the transformation was reversing with the same incredible speed it had begun. Dr. Robert Hayes returned to his quantum research, his particle accelerators once again probing the mysteries of the universe instead of turning enemies into component atoms. The weapons weren't destroyed, they were simply put away, like a tool returned to a shed after the job was done. Captain David Mitchell converted his warship back to cargo hauling. The same steady hands that had guided precision strikes, now carefully maneuvering through asteroid fields to deliver supplies to Mars colonies. The kindergarten teacher who had calculated explosive ratios went back to teaching children their multiplication tables. But now, every alien species knew those children were learning the building blocks of tactics and strategy. But here's the thing that really terrified the galaxy. The children who had learned to calculate kill ratios went back to their video games. But now every alien species knew those games were training, not entertainment. Every human hobby, every peaceful pursuit, every innocent-seeming activity had been revealed as potential military preparation. The compound effect was still at work. But now it was rebuilding instead of destroying. The same exponential growth that had transformed humanity into galactic conquerors was now transforming them back into explorers, scientists, and teachers. But the knowledge remained dormant, but not forgotten. You might wonder how a species could switch so completely between peace and war. The answer lies in understanding the difference between capacity and intention. A surgeon has the capacity to kill with precise cuts, but chooses to heal. A martial artist has the capacity to destroy, but chooses to protect. Humanity had always possessed the capacity for war. They had simply chosen to use it for peace. The galaxy had learned its lesson. In the vast cosmos filled with warrior races and conquering empires, there existed a species that had transcended the need for constant warfare without losing the capacity for it. Humanity had become something unprecedented beings who could wage war with the fury of gods and then choose to return to peace. The message spread across every communication network in known space. Humanity was returning to its peaceful ways. But the universe would never forget what they were capable of when threatened. Trade routes reopened, but now they carried a different kind of cargo: respect, caution, and the certain knowledge that Earth's children were not to be disturbed. Dr. Amanda Foster, the former pediatric surgeon who had coordinated biological warfare, returned to her hospital. But as she saved her first patient after the war, every alien species in the galaxy knew that the same hands that healed could destroy with surgical precision if necessary. The slumbering gods of war closed their eyes once more, but every civilization in the galaxy knew they were merely sleeping, not dead. And in that knowledge, a new kind of peace was born, one maintained not through weakness, but through the certain knowledge of what would awaken if that peace were ever threatened again. The message was clear: let humanity sleep. Disturb their dreams at your own peril. The compound effect that had built their civilization would rebuild it again if needed. Now the galaxy understood the true cost of waking the sleeping giants. That's the power of compounding. It works in every direction, building up what you focus on, whether that's wealth, knowledge, or the capacity to defend what you love. If you want to understand how this incredible force can transform your life in ways you never imagined, make sure to check out my next video on the power of compounding, because the same principle that made humanity legendary can make you unstoppable.